Section 21 of the Public Orations of Demosthenes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Public Orations of Demosthenes, translated by Arthur Wallace Pickard. On the Chersonese, Part 2. Now there are some who imagine that they confute a speaker as soon as they have asked him the question, "What then are we to do?" I will first give them this answer, the most just and true of all. Do not do what you are doing now. But at the same time I will give them a minute and detailed reply, and then let them show that their willingness to act upon it is not less than their eagerness to interrogate. First, men of Athens, you must thoroughly make up your minds to the fact that Philip is at war with Athens and has broken the peace. You must cease to lay the blame at one another's doors, and that he is evilly disposed and hostile to the whole city, down to the very ground on which it is built. Nay, I will go further, hostile to every single man in the city, even to those who are most sure that they are winning his favor. If you think otherwise, consider the case of Euthycrates and Clasthenes of Olynthus, who fancied that they were of the most friendly terms with him, but after they had betrayed their city, suffered the most utter ruin of all. But his hostilities and intrigues are aimed at nothing so much as at our constitution, whose overthrow is the very first object in the world to him. And in a sense it is natural that he should aim at this, for he knows very well that even if he becomes master of all the rest of the world, he can retain nothing securely so long as you are a democracy, and that if he chances to stumble anywhere, as may often happen to a man, all the elements which are now forced into union with him will come and take refuge with you. For though you are not yourselves naturally adapted for aggrandizement or the usurpation of empire, you have the art of preventing any other from seizing power, and of taking it from him when he has it. And in every respect you are ready to give trouble to those who are ambitious of dominion, and to lead all men forth into liberty. And so he would not have freedom from her home in Athens, watching for every opportunity he may offer. Far from it, and there is nothing unsound or careless in his reasoning. The first essential point, therefore, is this, that you conceive him to be the irreconcilable foe of your constitution and of democracy, for unless you are inwardly convinced of this, you will not be willing to take an active interest in the situation. Secondly, you must realize clearly that all the plans which he is now so busily contriving are in the nature of preparations against this country, and wherever anyone resists him, he there resists him on our behalf. For surely no one is so simple as to imagine that when Philip is covetous of the wretched hamlets of Thrace, one can give no other name to Drangulum, Cabili, Mastera, and the places which he is now seizing, and when to get these places he is enduring heavy labours, hard winters, and the extremity of danger, no one can imagine, I say, that the harbours and the dockyards and the ships of the Athenians, the produce of your silver mines and your huge revenue, have no attraction for him, or that he will leave you in possession of these, while he winters in the very pit of destruction for the sake of the millet and the spelt in the silos of Thrace. No, indeed, it is to get these into his power that he pursues both his operations in Thrace and all his other designs. What then, as sensible men, must you do? Knowing and realizing your position, as you do, you must lay aside this excessive, this irremediable indolence. You must contribute funds and require them from your allies. You must so provide and act that this force which is now assembled may be held together, in order that, as Philip has the force in readiness that is to injure and enslave all the Hellenes, you may have in readiness that which shall preserve and succor them. You cannot effect by isolated expeditions any of the things which must be effected. You must organize a force and provide maintenance for it, and pay masters and the staff of servants, and when you have taken such steps as will ensure the strictest possible watch being kept over the funds, you must hold these officials accountable for the money, and the general for the actual operations. If you act thus, and honestly make up your minds to take this course, you will either compel Philip to observe a righteous peace and remain in his own land, and no greater blessing could you obtain than that, or you will fight him on equal terms. It may be thought that this policy demands heavy expenditure and great exertions and trouble. That is true indeed. But let the objector take into account what the consequences to the city must be if he is unwilling to assent to this policy, and he will find that the ready performance of duty brings its reward. If indeed some god is offering us his guarantee, for no human guarantee would be sufficient in so great a matter, that if you remain at peace and let everything slide, Philip will not in the end come and attack yourselves, then, although, before God and every heavenly power, it would be unworthy of you and of the position that the city holds, and of the deeds of our forefathers, to abandon all the rest of the Hellenes to slavery for the sake of our own ease, although, for my part, I would rather have died than have suggested such a thing, yet, if another proposes it and convinces you, let it be so. Do not defend yourselves. Let everything go. But if no one entertains such a belief, if we all know that the very opposite is true, and that the wider the mastery we allow him to gain, the more difficult and powerful a foe we shall have to deal with, what further subterfuge is open to us? Why do we delay? When shall we ever be willing, men of Athens, to do our duty? When we are compelled, you say, but the hour of compulsion, as the word is applied to free men, is not only here already, but has long passed, and we must surely pray that the compulsion which is put upon slaves may not come upon us. And what is the difference? It is this, that for a free man the greatest compelling force is his shame at the course which events are taking. I do not know what greater we can imagine, but the slave is compelled by blows and bodily tortures, which I pray may never fall to our lot. It is not fit to speak of them. I would gladly tell you the whole story, and show how certain persons are working for your ruin by their policy. I pass over, however, every point but this. Whenever any question of our relations with Philip arises, at once someone stands up and talks of the blessings of peace, of the difficulty of maintaining a large force, and of designs on the part of certain persons to plunder our funds, with other tales of the same kind, which enables them to delay your action, and give Philip time to do what he wishes unopposed. What is the result? For you, the result is your leisure, and a respite from immediate action, advantages which I fear you will some day feel to have cost you dear, and for them it is the favour they win, and the wages for these services. But I am sure that there is no need to persuade you to keep the peace. You sit here fully persuaded. It is the man who is committing acts of war that we need to persuade, for if he is persuaded, you are ready enough. Nor is it the expenditure which is to ensure our preservation that ought to distress us, but the fate which is in prospect for us if we are not willing to take this action, while the threatened plunder of our funds is to be prevented by the proposal of some safeguard which will render them secure, not by the abandonment of our interests. And even so, men of Athens, I feel indignant at the very fact that some of you are so much pained at the prospect of the plunder of our funds, when you have it in your power both to protect them and to punish the culprits, and yet feel no pain when Philip is seizing all Hellas piecemeal for his plunder, and seizing it to strengthen himself against you. What then is the reason, men of Athens, that though Philip's campaigns, his aggressions, his seizure of cities are so unconcealed, none of my opponents has ever said that he was bringing about war? Why is it those who advise you not to allow it, not to make these sacrifices, that they accuse and say that they will be the cause of the war? I will inform you. It is because they wish to divert the anger which you are likely to show, if you suffer at all from the war, onto the heads of those who are giving you the best advice in your own interests. They want you to sit and try such persons instead of resisting Philip, and they themselves are to be the prosecutors instead of paying the penalty for their present actions. That is the meaning of their assertion that there are some here, forsooth, who want to bring about war. That is the real point of these allegations of responsibility. But this I know beyond all doubt, that without waiting for anyone in Athens to propose the declaration of war, Philip has not only taken many other possessions of ours, but has just now sent an expedition to Cardia. If, in spite of this, we wish to pretend that he is not making war on us, he would be the most senseless man living, were he to attempt to convince us of our error. But what shall we say when his attack is made directly upon ourselves? He, of course, will say that he is not at war with us, just as he was not at war with Arius when his soldiers were in the land, nor with the Pheraeans before that, when he was assaulting their walls, nor with the Olynthians first of all, until he and his army were actually within their territory. Or shall we still say that those who urge resistance are bringing about war? If so, all that is left to us is slavery. If we may neither offer resistance, nor yet be suffered to remain at peace, no other compromise is possible. And further, the issues at stake are not for you merely what they are for other states. What Philip desires is not your subjection, but your utter annihilation. For he knows full well that you will never consent to be his slaves, and that even if you were willing, you would not know the way, accustomed as you are to govern, and he knows that you will be able to give him more trouble if you get the opportunity than all the rest of the world. The struggle, then, is a struggle for existence, and as such you ought to think of it, and you should show your abhorrence of those who have sold themselves to Philip by beating them to death. For it is impossible, utterly impossible, to master your enemies outside the city before you punish your enemies in the city itself. Whence comes it, think you, that he is insulting us now? For his conduct seems to me to be nothing less than this, and that while he at least deceives all other peoples by doing them favours, he is using threats against you without more ado. For instance, he enticed the Thessalians by large gifts into their present servitude, and words cannot describe how greatly he deceived the Olynthians at first by the gift of Potidaea and much beside. At this moment he is alluring the Thebans by delivering up Boeotia to them, and reading them of a long and arduous campaign. Each of these peoples have first reaped some advantage before falling into those calamities which some of them have already suffered, as all the world knows, and some are destined to suffer whenever their time comes. But as for yourselves, to pass over all that you have been robbed of at an earlier period, what deception, what robbery have been practised upon you in the very act of making the peace? Have not the Phocians and Thermopylae and the Thracian seaboard, Doriscus, Cerium, Cersobleptes himself, been taken from you? Does not Philip at this moment occupy the city of the Cardians and avow it openly? Why is it then that he behaves as he does to all others, and so differently to you? Because yours is the one city in the world where men are permitted to speak on behalf of the enemy without fear. Because here a man may take bribes and still address you with impunity, even when you have been robbed of your own. In Olynthus it was only safe to take Philip's side when the people of Olynthus as a whole had shared Philip's favours and was enjoying the possession of Potidea. In Thessaly it was only safe to take Philip's side when the Thessalian commons had shared Philip's favours, for he had expelled the tyrants for them and restored to them their Amphictyonic position. In Thebes it was not safe until he had restored Boeotia to Thebes and annihilated the Phocians. But at Athens, though Philip has not only robbed you of Amphipolis and the territory of the Cardians, but has turned Euboea into a fortress overlooking your country, and is now on his way to attack Byzantium, at Athens it is safe to speak in Philip's interest. Aye, and you know that of such speakers some who were poor are rapidly growing rich, and some who were without name or fame are becoming famous and distinguished, while you, on the other hand, are becoming inglorious instead of famous, bankrupt instead of wealthy. For a city's wealth consists, I imagine, in allies, confidence, loyalty, and of all this you are bankrupt. And because you are indifferent to these advantages and let them drift away from you, he has become prosperous and powerful and formidable to all, Hellenes and foreigners alike, while you are deserted and humbled, with a splendid profusion of commodities in your market, and a contemptible lack of all those things with which you should have been provided. But I observe that certain speakers do not follow the same principles in the advice which they give you as they follow for themselves. You, they tell you, ought to remain quiet, even when you are wronged. But they cannot remain quiet in your presence, even when no one is wronging them. But now someone or other comes forward and says, but you will not move a motion or take any risk. You are a poor-spirited coward. Bold, offensive, shameless, I am not, and I trust I may never be, and yet I think I have more courage than very many of your dashing statesmen. For one man of Athens who overlooks all that the city's interest demands, who prosecutes, confiscates, gives, accuses, does so not from any bravery, but because in the popular character of his speeches and public actions he has a guarantee of his personal safety, and therefore is bold without risk. But one who is acting for the best sets himself in many ways against your wishes, who never speaks to please, but always to advise what is best, one who chooses a policy in which more issues must be decided by chance than by calculation, and yet makes himself responsible to you for both. That is the courageous man, and such is the citizen who is of value to his country, rather than those who, to gain an ephemeral popularity, have ruined the supreme interests of the city. So far am I from envying these men, or thinking them worthy citizens of their country, that if anyone were to ask me to say what good I had really done to the city, although, men of Athens, I could tell how often I had been trierarch and choragus, how I had contributed funds, ransomed prisoners, and done other like acts of generosity, I would mention none of these things. I would say only that my policy is not one of measures like theirs, that although, like others, I could make accusations and shower favors and confiscate property and do all that my opponents do. I have never to this day set myself to do any of these things. I have been influenced neither by gain nor by ambition. But I continue to give the advice which sets me below many others in your estimation, but which must make you greater if you will listen to it. For so much perhaps I may say without offence. Nor I think should I be acting fairly as a citizen if I advised such political measures as would at once make me the first man in Athens, and you the last of all peoples. As the measures of a loyal politician develop, the greatness of his country should develop with them. And it is the thing which is best, not the thing which is easiest, that every speaker should advocate. Nature will find the way to the easiest course unaided. To the best, the words and the guidance of the loyal citizen must show the way. I have heard it remarked before now, that though what I say is always what is best, still I never contribute anything but words, whereas the city needs work of some practical kind. I will tell you without any concealment my own sentiments on this matter. There is no work that can be demanded of any of your public advisers except that he should advise what is best, and I think I can easily show you that this is so. No doubt you know how the great Demosthenes delivered a speech to the effect that you ought to go to the rescue and save the Euboeans when the Thebans were trying to reduce them to servitude, and how in the course of his speech he spoke somewhat in this strain. What, said he, when you actually have the Thebans in the island, do you debate what you are to do with them, and how you are to act? Will you not cover the sea with warships, men of Athens? Will you not rise from your seats and go instantly to the Piraeus and launch your vessels? So Timotheus spoke, and you acted as he bade you, and through his speech and your action the work was done. But if he had given you the best possible advice, as in fact he did, and you had lapsed into indolence and paid no attention to it, would the city have achieved any of the results which followed on that occasion? Impossible. And so it is with all that I say today, and with all that this or that speaker may say. For the actions you must look to yourselves. From the speaker you must require that he give you the best counsel that he can. I desire now to sum up my advice and to leave the platform. I say that we must contribute funds and must keep together the force now in existence, correcting anything that may seem amiss in it, but not disbanding the whole force because of the possible criticisms against it. We must send envoys everywhere to instruct, to warn, and to act. Above all, we must punish those who take bribes in connection with public affairs, and must everywhere display our abhorrence of them, in order that reasonable men who offer their honest services may find their policy justified in their own eyes and in those of others. If you treat the situation thus, and cease to ignore it altogether, there is a chance I say, even now, that it may improve. If, however, you sit idle, with an interest that stops short at applause and acclamation, and retires into the background when any action is required, I can imagine no oratory which, without action on your part, will be able to save your country. End of section 21.